Yep, yep, I'm ready. It's gonna be like a. All right, cool. Well, it's loud. Okay. Well, welcome to our first trade talk of this year. Thank you guys for coming. We're really excited for Dave to talk to you guys and for us to hear his story. I've never heard his full story actually, so I'm actually excited. Sweet. I'm looking forward to it. But to give you guys some background into Dave and his life and who he is and kind of what makes Dave Dave, we're going to show a little video. And yeah, it's about 3.5 minutes long, so sweet.
Hi, my name is Oscar, and I'm here because I need this job. And I've been asked to tell you a little bit about our company, where we've been, where we're going, and something that maybe you don't know. I was told by a lot of experts that people will never buy golf equipment by mail. Don't do it. Well, I'm no smarter than they were, but I did have the feeling that if you have the right product at the right time, at the right price, and build up an image that they know they can trust you, you can sell anything by mail. And as it turned out, things worked out pretty well. We went from sending out 25 or 30 postcards till today, we send out more than 30 million catalogs a year.
My father was an insurance claims adjuster, had no intention whatsoever of being in the golf business, and ultimately we became the largest in the world, and we had no idea that was going to happen.
Grandpa started the business in 1963, and they started from their kitchen table, which, what a fantastic American business story. Start at the kitchen table, and then grow it into what it is today.
I think for anyone to have a lot of success, you have to have a good idea, and you have to get a little lucky. And my grandfather, Oscar, had both.
But one of the things that I think Austad did was that we brought it to the masses and allowed people to be able to try the game and go out and play, and it lost some of its mystique of being just this rich man's sport. And I'm very proud of that. I think one of the legacies that Austad has is that we were a big part of what made golf grow from 10 million golfers back in 1960 to 30 to 35 million now.
Golf is a perfect analogy for life. It's a perfect analogy for business because none of us in this world will go through life without adversity. And golf teaches you a lot about yourself and how you're going to handle that and move forward productively.
It's just a really wonderful, wonderful sport. You can play with friends, you can play competitively, or you can just go out and have a good time. And I'm so glad that we are in this business. I think we have a pretty good understanding of who we are, what we want to do, what we want to create in this world, and how we want to leave it a better place.
We're proud to have started the world's first golf catalog, but we are humbled to evolve into one of the most awarded club fitting operations in the country.
So the question arises, why did we succeed when all of the experts said that you can't be done? Number one, we try to operate on the basis of the golden rule. Honesty, loyalty, intelligence, and ambition. We want to treat our customers the way we would want to be treated if we were in their shoes.
We are a family business. We like to extend that feeling to our customers and to our employees and really try to make the experience special when they walk in our doors.
We're hopefully going to have a lot more good years than bad. Boy, you better be able to figure out how to be nimble because we're not looking to get out of this. This is what we do. We're the Austad family. We've been in this since '63 and we'll be in it a long time to come.
Awesome. Well, Dave Austad, please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for coming out on a Friday night. How many of you are golfers? How many of you have played putt-putt golf? Okay. How many of you are here because you like golf and because you're here? I got to do a golf joke, right? So this foursome was out playing, and beautiful Sunday morning, absolutely gorgeous, sun in the air, just enjoying it. And Bill has a birdie putt. It's like 8 feet long, and he's lining up the putt, ready to make it happen. And just as he's ready to putt, this funeral procession comes going by, and it has the hearse in front, and it's got everybody behind him. And immediately, Bill drops his putter, takes his golf cap off, puts it over his heart, and watches the procession go by. And it takes about 3 minutes for the whole procession to go by. And the rest of the guys are like, Bill, what's going on here? That's kind of weird. Why are you doing that? It's really nice that you would honor that person that had the funeral. And he said, well, we'd have been married 42 years on Tuesday. It's the least I could do, you know? You get it? Because it was his wife. You get it? So it's kind of a typical golf joke because it typically deals with death and how we make priorities, right? We make decisions. And in Bill's case, his priority was golf, and I'm not going to recommend that, but I will tell you that that's kind of the theme of my talk today is priorities. And as wonderful as our video is and as blessed as we have been as a family with Austad's Golf, priorities can get a little mired in the growth and what happened with us in our business. And so that's really going to be my story tonight is how I got involved with all this and how it kind of swept me up in the process and how it's changed me for today. So my dad started the business in 1963, as it said. My mom typed up the first catalog. We were about 4 miles away, started in our house. The first retail store was actually in the basement, and you had to go through my bedroom to get to the retail store. So Dad would say, hey, Dave, we got customers tomorrow. Make sure your pajamas don't have any holes in them, because we're gonna bring customers through and sure enough, they turned the lights on and customers came through and all that. He was an insurance claims adjuster. You might find it interesting. He was 41 years old. He was basically a failure at life at 41. He had been fired from 4 of his last 5 jobs because he had the tenacity to tell people how to run their business, and it didn't tend to work very well. So he would get fired, and he had no intention, as I mentioned in the video, of ever making this thing a worthwhile venture. But my mom's brother started a golf company in Chicago, and I think in one of the family reunions he said, hey, can I sell some of this stuff? And I go, yeah, knock yourself out, you know, it helps my sister have some food, and I've seen how big your sister's kids are. We'll just help you out. So if you had insurance claims, my dad might come up and he'd say, all right, I'll give you $100 for your bumper. Do you play golf? And if you said yes, he would go over to his car, pop up in the trunk, and he'd say, here's some golf stuff. And that's kind of how he started. And then he got the idea of developing this catalog. And my mom typed up the very first sheet. Basically, it was called a catalog, but it was just a sheet of paper. She typed it up on the kitchen table, and then we got copies of every yellow page in the United States, big cities, and we pulled out doctors and lawyers and dentists, people that we thought might be interested in golf, and we would send out a little postcard. I and my 5 brothers and sisters would sit around and we would lick stamps. And we would be 1 cent, and we would put the stamp on the little postcard and say, hey, we have a golf catalog. If you'd like it, please return this other half. And that's how we were born. And from that, we just exploded. You might be interested, there's different ages here. My father was an extremely fortunate guy in the early 40s, when he was in his early 40s. When you think about it, and some of you will know this, some of you won't, there were a couple of things happening when he started this business in the early 60s. And if you look at like Bill Gates and some of these other real success, I'm not comparing my dad to Bill Gates, but I'm just saying there are some times when fortune can kind of bless you. There were 2 things that were happening that really helped us a lot. One is there were 2 golfers in 1963 that came out of nowhere, and they were battling on a regular basis, and it was the first time that the world was kind of looking at these guys on a regular basis. Anybody want to guess who that was? Palmer's one. A little fatter back then, another guy that was Jack Nicklaus, okay? So Palmer and Jack Nicklaus were beating each other up on a weekly basis. Up until that time, you couldn't even watch. And again, you young people will be looking at me like, what's the deal? Color television came into being in the early 60s. So you could actually see the golf ball. You could actually visualize it, whereas before that, they would show golf, and believe it or not, they would show the guy swinging, and then they would show a still shot of the golf ball just laying on the ground. That was really, really good television. If you guys watch television today, enjoy the fact that you can see the select track, you can see how fast he's swinging and all that stuff. None of that was around in the early 60s, but it started happening where you could see the ball. And golf exploded. My dad had the only golf catalog in the world, and all of a sudden, things went crazy. We moved from our house to an 8th Street warehouse. We moved from the 8th Street warehouse to a 35,000 square foot building at 10th and Sycamore. And then we added another 120,000 feet to that as we kept building and on and on and on and on. In the meantime, out of the 5 kids, eventually 6, my brother was born in 1972, 10 years later, but I always had a passion for the golf industry. I always knew this is what I was going to do. So when I was a kid, I would mow the lawn at the golf shop, what Dad would call. When I got older, I would work in the warehouse and I would pack orders. When I was in high school, I actually ran the retail store, and I actually went to Augustana so that I could continue to work in the marketing department and work on designing of catalogs and photography and all that other stuff. And I absolutely loved it, and I knew this was the only place I was going to be. And as I graduated from Augustana, I did a really incredible interview with the CEO, and I was able to land a job at Austad's Golf. It was amazing. It was the only interview I've ever had in my life. Never had to even write up a resume. It was great. And from that point on, life was good. Life was really good. In fact, by the age of 27, my father selected me as president of Austad's. And so here I am, 27 years old. We have 600 employees by now. We have a 150,000 square foot warehouse. We're mailing 30 million catalogs around the United States, and we're also mailing them to Italy, to the UK, to Japan. I was flying to Japan and China and all these other countries as a 27-year-old. I mean, it was pretty crazy. I was making crazy money. I mean, we couldn't figure out where to put the money because we were the only people around that were doing this thing. And, you know, in a rather crude way of saying it, I felt like it was all me. I mean, I'm a genius. I'm an absolute incredible genius, and we are the largest. And I would go and meet with these manufacturers like Wilson and Callaway and TaylorMade, and I was always the youngest guy in the room. But I was the guy they were always asking, what's the questions? How can I get your business? How can we grow? How can we do all that? And my head just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I will take a step back, and I want to talk about my faith a little bit, because when I was in high school, my family was faithful. They went to church. We would all 8 of us would roll into church, and Dad made sure that we were always in the first row so that everyone could see us, because that's good business, you know. You want to be in the front row so people can see everybody that's there. But I wouldn't say we're really religious. My mom would always pray for us, and I think she was always the glue from a religion standpoint. Everybody else, it was kind of a interesting thing that we did on Sunday, and then that was it. And something tugged at me when I was in high school, and I really felt like I need to understand what this Christianity is. I need to either figure out that this is for real, and I need to really grasp it, or I need to stop wasting my time going to church on Sundays. And so I started reading some of you might remember Bruce Wilkinson, who wrote a book called Cross and the Switchblade. Was a pastor that would go into the ghetto, and he would just miracle after miracle, he would convert these people in these ghettos, and it was very powerful for me. And then I read Josh McDowell, More Than a Carpenter, who was an atheist, and his dad was an alcoholic, and he felt there was no God, but he went out and started studying and looking at what was going on, and ultimately came to the conclusion that yes, there is a God. And he did it through more of a scientific approach on how to come about it, and I found that very powerful. And another book I read that I found very powerful was a guy that was in politics, Richard Nixon's hatchet man. His name was Chuck Colson, and he wrote a book called Born Again. And he was not a Christian. In fact, when he was in politics, he was very proud of the fact that people would say if he had to run over his own mother to take care of Richard Nixon, he would do it. So, you know, there was a little work to do there. And there was a congressman from Iowa that sat down and confronted him and said, Chuck, you're not happy, you're miserable. There's more to life. There's more that goes on there. And Chuck listened, and he went to his car and he cried like a baby. This is right before the Watergate situation. He ultimately became a Christian there sitting in the car, and then as he ended up with a prison term from the Watergate, and he ended up building a charity that is now the largest charity in the world in prisons called Prison Fellowship. Unfortunately, he passed away about 6-7 years ago, but it was very powerful for me. So I felt like I had a very strong faith. And then I went to Augustana, and a wonderful college that is great for Christianity. And I went to my first religion class, and my religion prof said, let me go over all of the discrepancies of the Bible on where it says, what it says here and what it says there. And I know I have a lot of friends that went to Augie as well, and they walked out of there with a incredible faith. Unfortunately, I was not one of those guys. And I walked out, and unfortunately, if you've looked at the statistics, I think it's like 70% of people that say they are a Christian when they go to college, when they leave a college, they say they are much less of a Christian. And that's very, very unfortunate, and I would be one of those people. So I left Augustana not with the faith that I had before, and I jumped into business, and I absolutely thrilled with the fact that because of my brilliance, I was able to grow this Austad's business company. And because I am such a brilliant guy, I need to have things that show that I am so brilliant. So obviously, I can't have a regular American car. I have to have a Lexus back then. And Lexus just came out, and there were no Lexuses in Sioux Falls, so I had to go to Minneapolis, and I was the very first person in the Sioux Falls that had a Lexus. Thank you very much. It's a big deal. It's a big, big deal, right? Thank you very much. I needed to join a country club, right? Because I'm a golfer, and I need to make sure I join. I can't just join one country club. There's 2 country clubs, so I had to be a member of both country clubs so that, I can enjoy it in case I want a tea time at 2 o'clock. I can call the other club if they had something going on. 27 years old, I'm doing this, right? I need a house. I can't just live, and we were living, my wife's over here and my daughter, and we were living in a very nice split level over on the east side of town. But, again, I'm kind of a big deal, all right? So I need a big house. And there just so happened there was a new development building on the south side called Prairie Tree. And again, I was the very first person to buy a lot in Prairie Tree because that's the way I roll. So I built this massive house looking down over the city, and life was good. Life was really, really good. We ended up having 4 children. Just everything was great. I was president of the church that I belonged to. I was speaking all over the country. I was traveling all over, making tons of money. And my vision at that point, if you were to ask me, was, well, we're just going to keep growing. Forbes was my favorite magazine. I will be on the cover of Forbes magazine. It's just going to happen, right? Because, I'm me, right? So I'm going to be on the cover, and I'm going to be one of the top 400 richest people in the world, and I'm going to, just continue to roll in this stuff, absolutely roll. Well, I have a feeling that God had different plans for me, and I think he probably looked and said, Dave, I'm going to probably need to do something a little more intense with this guy because he's got a pretty thick head, and I'm going to have to get through to him. So, life changed, businesses change. Excuse me. Do we have any water? Is it possible to get a bottle of water or something? Thanks, man. You're right on it. So anyway, I continued to work in my business, and things changed rather rapidly. As I got into my 30s, believe it or not, there are competitors that looked and said, if somebody from Sioux Falls, South Dakota can be the largest distributor of golf equipment in the world, we can do that. So all of a sudden, competitors came in, and they started mailing catalogs, and they started growing, and they started taking in our business. Imagine that. How rude was that? In fact, at one point, I'll share this a little later. So that was one thing. In addition, costs started skyrocketing. We didn't have the controls. Our inventory started going crazy. We had some products that we wanted, but we couldn't get. There was a new club called the Big Bertha driver, and they would not sell to me. So, and that was 45% of the market back then, and our competition had it, we didn't. So all of a sudden, debt started bringing up. Our bank started saying, hey, maybe you should go look for another bank. My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. My older brother, 4 years older, when my dad picked me as president, said, hey, that's good, that's fine, I love it. At this point, he was not nearly as excited that I was running it because he was married, and his wife was like, no, maybe you should be making this money and you should be doing some different things. So there was tension with my brother and I, to the point where we ultimately had to both hire attorneys, and we're arguing back and forth, and we had to actually make a pact that we would have an advisory board. He would pick half, I would pick half, and they would ultimately decide what happens to he and I and who stays in the business. And ultimately they decided that my brother would leave the business, but it was an incredibly stressful time. So my dad is dying, the company is dying, I'm at a tremendous amount of debt, just a lot of awful things going on. And so I make a deal with a large mail order company out of the East Coast, and they come in and they buy 70% of our business. I remain 30%. I'm still running the company. My family is saved. My dad and my mom and all my sisters and brothers, they got their money. And I'm like, thank you, God. You took care of me. I got it all figured out. Now I came back and I can run the business. I got plenty of money from this other business. Things are good. I'm a 30% owner. They're a 70% owner. For those of you who are business majors, that means that you know how much power I have? I have zero. I have no power whatsoever. So 4 months after I did the deal, they flew me to San Diego and they said, Dave, we love you. You're great. You're awesome. But by the way, we're going to move the warehouse from Sioux Falls to Pennsylvania. And the call center is going to move as well. And oh, by the way, when you go back, you're going to have a meeting with all 600 of your employees and tell them because of your decision, they're going to lose their job. And every time I fly through San Diego now, I know the terminal, I know the gate that I sat in while I had my hands on my face like, how in the world am I going to go back and tell people that because of my decision, they're losing their job? We're going to have to move. There's no way we can stay in Sioux Falls. My life's going to be in jeopardy here. This is going to be really, really ugly. But somehow I went back, and of course, all of the visions that I had about the Lexus, the country club, the big house, and all that, immediately, God was saying, that was really ridiculous. I was focusing on the absolute wrong things. And with courage and faith that I had and God's power, I went back. I met with all of the employees. I looked at them face to face. We cried together. I apologized. We set up a program where they could go out and find new jobs. And fortunately, all of them found new jobs when they moved away. And it completely changed my perspective on what was going on. And as I look back now, sometimes when you're facing adversity and you feel like, man, this is tough, this is really hard, it may just be God knocking on your head saying, maybe you need to think about things a little bit differently. And that was a few years ago. We have now grown. We have changed immensely, as you saw in the video. We have changed our focus. We're no longer a catalog company. We're now a retail store. Actually, we have 10 retail stores. It's a family business. My son and my daughter are both in the business. My oldest daughter runs our internet business, and my son basically runs the operation, and then I take all the credit. It's awesome. It's really good. It's great. But I look back and I realize that had I not had that wake-up call, who knows where I would be today. And I look at a lot of folks who had the vision to say, I want fame, that's what I'm going after. That's my priority. Back to Bill on the putting green, whose priority was to finish the round. That can mess you up, and you need to continue to be grounded in your faith and what's God's reason for you being here. And I've been involved in a Bible study. We've been in a couples Bible study for 25 years that has helped stay grounded. And it has allowed me to figure out that there is a plan there. It's not my plan. It's God's plan. I need to take a break. I need to sit back and I need to really listen. I need to pray to God and say, what do you want me to do today? What is your goal for my life? Not as what's my goal. My guess is his goal was not for me to have a Lexus or to be a member of a country club or those kind of things. So I wrote down a couple of things because I'm old and I have learned a few things, and I just wanted to write down, these are some key points in life that I thought might be interesting in sharing. Number one, there's a couple of songs out there. Stephen Curtis Chapman had one called This Is Not Our Home, and I always remind myself of that. God created us to be here, but this is not where we're supposed to be long term. We are here for a very short period of time, and ultimately, his goal is for us to be with him in heaven. And so we need to follow what his word is, and maybe that also will mean that you don't have to be so hung up on what's going on today. Because again, this is not our home. This is not where we're ultimately supposed to be, right? Maybe? Sure? Can I get an amen? Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Secondly, and this has taken a while because I think there's a lot of Christians that want to believe, but they believe that Satan is just scary, and I don't really want to talk about him. I don't really want to be involved in there. And I do believe Satan is real. I believe that it's there in the Bible. I think Satan is mentioned something like 600 times. There is a battle going on, and it's going on a daily basis. There is good and there is evil. And you young folks, I get to say that makes me feel really old when I say young folks. You are seeing it way more than I did when I was your age. Let's put it that way. It is front and center, and sometimes you don't even if you come in and confront evil, you are chastised for it. And that was not really the case when I was in my 20s. And and I have 8 grandkids, and I pray for them every night about how are they going to be able to battle and discern what is good and what is bad, because Satan's a clever guy. He's very clever on how to determine what's good and what's bad. And angels are there, and if you're there to ask for help, they're there to help you. Bad things happen to good people. I read a biography on Albert Einstein, and one of the smartest guys in the world, and his ultimate reality was, I believe there's a God, all the facts portray to that, but he could not wrap his head around why bad things happen to good people. And ultimately, you go back to, again, the Bible has all the answers. It was a perfect world at one point. It was great. We screwed it up, and there is bad things that occur here. The good news, again, is this is not our home, and ultimately we will get to a place where there are not good things. All things are going to be good. You will not have sin. You won't have bad things happening. But it's difficult to read every day when you see really good people having bad things happen to them. And of course, eternal life we can't comprehend eternal life, and of course we don't deserve it. There's nothing we can do to actually deserve eternal life, but we're going to get it if we just believe in God and we follow Him and we glorify Him. And another thing that I have learned over the years is look for the good in everyone and look for the good in everything. Got a flat tire yesterday on my way home from Minneapolis, and I was sitting on I-90 in my Suburban, and the semi-trucks were flying by at 90 miles an hour, because they can do that. And I was waiting for my friends at AAA, and an hour went by, an hour and a half went by, 2 hours went by, 5 phone calls to AAA went by. I still had not seen any tow truck. And I was starting to get a little tense because it was starting to rain, it was getting dark, and my phone was dying. So I'm like, okay, this started out as kind of a mild situation. It could end up being something, and literally these trucks are going like 2 inches from my rearview mirror. And it actually allowed me to have some quiet time, to pray, and to kind of think about what I'm going to talk about today. And I kind of went, I don't know, God, if that was Him that put a nail in my tire, because it was a brand new tire, and I got a flat tire, and I ended up spending some really good quality time by myself sitting on the highway on I-90. So take advantage of the opportunity. You never know when those opportunities are going to come. So with that, thank you for listening. I appreciate your attention. I am happy to answer any question that you might have. It's a great question, Doug. What's weird, and my wife can probably attest to this, it wasn't highs and lows like this. My life has been like this, and then it was a complete drop, and then it came up. Everything happened at once. My dad dies. In fact, the day that the last shipment left the warehouse at 10th and Sycamore to the new buyers that lied to me was the day my dad died. It was just, and my brother, he and I didn't talk to each other for years. It was just all happening at once. And I was not mad at God. I think that whole process strengthened my faith. It allowed me to get through it. And I have friends that helped me immensely, and there were a number of them that said, I don't know how you did it, and I think part of it was I had no choice. It was just coming at me from every direction. The bank was, on my tail. The business, the employees were saying, hey, give me a new job. What's going on? My brother, my family, my dad's dying. I was the one who was taking care of all the big decisions with my dad relating to memory care and all that stuff. And God got me through it. So I got out of there, I think, with a much stronger faith than what I had before. Fortunately, I don't know why, but I didn't have the, and I know that that can happen, but I didn't have the, God, why are you doing this kind of thing? So, good question. What else? Yes, sir.
So for us young people, what would you say is like your biggest piece of advice for us who are still in college, who are figuring out life, what we want to do with their career? What would you say are some of the top priorities for us?
Great question. Do you know what the average person, you know how many career changes they make in their life? Last time I looked, I think it's 6. Doug, have you heard anything close to that? I think it's about 6. And I will say that the interview process and your generation, there's a lot of really wonderful, amazing people there. I will also tell you that there's a lot of people that are your age that want instant gratification. They come in and they're not really necessarily saying, what's my role or how can I expand in the company? It's like, how much vacation do I get? I got to go to a concert on Saturday. Can I get Saturday off? And, what's the pay raise and how that's going? And I get it. When you got a 1.7 unemployment rate, sure, you can find another job by noon if you want to. But I would challenge all of you that, do you want a job or do you want a career? And sometimes that means you might be in a job, you might be bagging groceries at Hy-Vee. Hy-Vee is a pretty good example because you're making very little money and you're working your tail off and your back hurts when you get home and you're saying, gee, why am I doing this? I have friends that have been with Hy-Vee for a number of years. They're making $500,000 a year. They're doing pretty well. I'm doing all right. But they decided that they were going to hang in there. And I would say you need to work hard. You need to have some dedication. You need to say, what can I do? Instead of saying, as an employer, what are you going to do for me? You need to, in the interview process, to say, here's the things that I can do for you. When you go into an interview, I see this a lot. I say, my first question is, so what makes you interested in Austad's? Most of them don't even have a clue anything about us. They haven't even gone on the website to see how many stores we have or looked at the video or whatever. And I'm like, you haven't made yourself really compelling for me to hire you. And then when you do get hired, prove to me that you have the ability. If you do, in today's world, you guys can write your ticket. My gosh, because the competition is not that great. So you get somebody that works. I'm serious. You work really hard. You can write your own ticket at whatever you want to do. And I guess my last thing is just do something you enjoy. Do something that's a passion. Do something that you feel like God is really pulling you in that direction, and this is something that you're destined to do. Yes, sir. When I was at my lowest point, how do I hold on to God? How do I hang in there? I would say one of my lowest points was when, believe it or not, it was the conflict with my brother that was, for some reason, it brings up all of, family business is a wonderful thing. I don't know if any of you have, or you come from a family business. You probably can relate to this. It's great, but you bring the family into the business. So all of the stuff when you were little kids and this guy, mom liked you best and all of that stuff, that all comes out, and it's all part of the whole shebang. And I remember there was a point when our attorneys were screaming at each other. I was screaming at my brother, and I felt like there was never a time when I will ever speak to him again. And this was probably the first time when I really felt the hand of God on my shoulder, because I just went back to my office and I said, God, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. And I felt this absolute release, this absolute, Dave, it's not worth it. It is just not worth it. And I went back to my brother and I said, whatever you want, take it. It's yours. You can, we'll figure this out. And he did. But my wife and I were just in, he lives in Colorado now, and we just went to the Mercy Me concert at Red Rocks with my brother. Things have improved immensely, and he came up to me, probably about 10 years ago, and he apologized, and I apologized to him, because just a lot of stuff can happen. But I just remembered that incredible instant where it all just left my body. I had rage, I had hate, I had all of that, and it all just went away. It was amazing. And from that point on, I realized I got somebody on my side I should probably utilize more. That's it's a pretty good consultant, I can help. But thank you for the question. Good question. Anything else? I'm here for you, Doug. Or we could do coffee if you want.
No, I think this is interesting. You can bridge this about anything, but what are you really proud of that you did personally? And what would you really do different?
So the question is, what am I really proud of, and what would I really do differently? I'm proud of the fact that I was able to get through all this and keep relationships with the employees that we ultimately had to tell them they were losing their job. I see former employees almost every day, and they approach me and we talk, and almost without an exception, they say, you guys were the best job I ever had. And there wasn't animosity. They appreciated the openness and the dialogue, and they recognized this issue and the situation that we were in, and they appreciated what was going on with that. I will say another thing I'm really proud of is the fact that through all of this, my family, my 5 brothers and sisters, we still get together on a regular basis. We still talk. We still have communication. My 4 kids and my 8 grandkids, we get together. You saw that picture of my wife cooking out at our house. That was not staged. We get together. We have a blast. We have a really, really good time. And I enjoy that, and I hope we never lose that, because my family enjoys hanging out with each other, and I think that's great. If I could do one thing over again, I've thought about this 100 times, and I will just set the scene for you. So my world is falling apart. Our business is falling apart. The bank's telling us we have to find another bank or we're going to go bankrupt. My brother is suing me. My dad is dying. I come up with this solution of this large company that's going to come in and buy us. And so we're at a law office downtown, about 6 blocks away. And I'm in a conference room, and the conference room has agreements all the way around this 20-foot table. It's all the way there. My wife, who is very perceptive, and I'm pretty proud that we put this together. She goes over to the big East Coast attorney. She looks at him in the eye, and she says, "How can I trust you? How can we believe that you're actually going to do what you say you're going to do?" And he says, "Oh, of course we're going to do that. We love Dave. Why in the world would we do anything else? Why would we do that?" She walks over to me in the corner and she said, "Don't sign the deal. He is lying through his teeth. You're going to get screwed." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. That's great." I signed it, yeah, and 3 months later, it all happened. So in retrospect, listen to your wife. She's probably smarter than you get credit for. Yeah, so I would say that's one that I could probably redo if I could. I think I probably had other opportunities, but this is the way it ended up. So, other questions, comments? Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed being with you today. Hopefully you picked up something. Isaiah's got some putting games, chipping games, or something if you want to go win. I think we got some Austad gift cards. You got other stuff going on. So. Thank you very much for your time and your questions. It was fun talking to you.
Thank you. Yes, like Dave said, we do have we're going to do a little chipping game that I am going to strive to win. I'm trying to be more confident in golf. Last time I was telling Dave how bad I was, and he said that I seemed real confident. So, and then we're going to have a mini putt game, but then we'll also have those raffles. If you didn't